informative. Like, it's one of those things I'd love to, at the end of each year, bring in about 5 or 6 coaches and just interview them. You know, you can't do that unless you got an opening, but I knew I would learn some things. I learned a vast amount of knowledge about, you know, because you start asking them, like, how does this coach do things? What do y'all do? And just from scheduling to how you do road games to how you start training camp, the ramp-up process. I mean, we got into player care, you know, just how you do. I mean, one team was talking about when you got to phase 1, there's no football talk. It's running, lifting, and getting to know each other. There was just so many tangible examples of things that I want to sit with Joe and kind of share with him what I learned. But it was tiring, but it was fun. I loved every minute. I would have loved to have kept it going and just keep rolling people in. But you also see coaches coming off the board, and you're like, all right, we've got some good candidates. We need to narrow this down and make a selection.
Sometimes an assistant coach it's a challenging transition sometimes for these guys. What was it about Joe's personality, his approach that you've seen the last 4 years that gave you confidence that he can step in, and some dynamics might change in terms of relationships, but he's the guy who can handle that?
Yeah, you know what? One of the things I thought about later in the process, not when we started it, when we were kind of narrowing it down, was Joe was the quarterback coach, and mid-season was handed the job with, there's no preparation, there was no interview, it was just, and he didn't just pick up and run the same thing. Like, he knew there was a change that needed to be made, and while he couldn't do wholesale changes to the offense, he brought things that are not about X's and O's to the group, the attitude, the communication, the energy, and you felt at practice just a different energy when Joe took over that. And so I think things like that give you confidence to do that. But I truly did not try to think of Joe as working for us. I just thought the fairest process to compare each candidate is that none of them, including, you know, Brian Dable, you know, I'd ever worked with, and kind of clear that from my head.
Brandon, you didn't cross over with Joe in Carolina, but what did you know about him before he came to this organization?
Yeah, so you knew that, listen, it didn't work out there with, you know, his team, and obviously they made changes shortly after at the top. But so many people, when we hired him, I didn't interview Joe. That would have been, you know, Ken Dorsey at the time. I don't know how much, I'm sure Sean was involved at some level. I was down at the Senior Bowl when we did it, but from the Senior Bowl, you know, while I'm hearing names that we're looking at, I did call some people in Carolina and that were still there, and some that had moved on, and they just, you know, some of them have texted me this, man, love Joe. Like, they really enjoyed the person, the character, the DNA, and they hated that it didn't work there. But he was a guy they would continue to root for, and they're like, he will fit your culture if you guys bring him in there.
Brandon, you talk a lot about the CEO part of this and how important that was. You ended up only talking to 2 guys who have had CEO experience. Why go so far away from that unique quality to the guys that really didn't have that quality in terms of who you talked to?
Yeah, good question. Everyone's got to have a chance and get a start. And like I said, I tried to reflect on my own. I was an interim GM, and I wanted it, but I was also told at the end that they needed someone from outside the building, and it's just like, but when my interview, I expressed the things that I would change, and that's why I thought personally that was the best way to approach this, is to not view that Joe had been here or never been in that seat. Would you love to hire someone who you've seen, done it, been successful? Sure, but you also don't want to discount that Joe doesn't have the qualities to learn and grow on the job, and maybe have a higher ceiling than some of the people that have already done it.
Brandon, how did you weigh Joe's offensive philosophy versus the existing continuity of the culture?
Continuity had nothing to do with it. We set out and treated this, again, that Joe was never here. I think that's the fairest way. So we were not worried about continuity. It was about finding the right fit for this team and to be the next head coach of the Bills.
Brandon, the comments last week about Keon Coleman certainly took off. What sort of dialogue have you had with Keon, his representation, and how would you categorize the relationship between both sides right now?
Yeah, I think it's very good. You know, anything can, you know, the intent, you know, I know from Terry was not, how it was stated. He was trying to explain a draft process, and sometimes you get down to 2 or 3 people, and you don't always agree on the order, whether it's coaches, personnel, whatever. But at the end of the day, we were excited to turn in the card for Keon. We know the first 2 years have had some bumps in the road. As I said last week, the key with Keon is the on the field stuff is good. No one, from the quarterback to Joe to anyone, no one. It's just when you have some of the immaturity things that came up, that costs trust, which costs opportunities. And so he's going to need to continue this offseason. He needs to do what he did last offseason, have the same training camp all of us here witnessed, and the first game, and not let anything get in the way. But yes, I talked to his couple great talks with his agent. Keon and I we've traded multiple messages, and he is head down, ready to go, and that's our plan moving forward.
Where are you guys cap-wise? How much work you're going to have to do with the sight of a new coach and maybe new staff in mind?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get more numbers. We have some, kind of a ballpark of where we think I'm going to guess we're, on the low end, 15, 16, over the cap, maybe to 20, 21. So hopefully, I'm always rooting for more dollars. You guys know that. Like, yes, we got more than we thought. But we've already started thinking about moves. I was honestly, before this head coaching change, already thinking about certain things we'll do. I'll have to circle back to some of that because once the head coaching search began, that's been the 100% focus. So now that we do that, we'll focus. But we got time. The next thing is to get the correct coordinators, assistant coaches in here, get them in. Let's talk about our personnel, and let's make sure we're making the right decision, not to move on from someone too soon, but also not too late.
You mentioned Josh had his foot fixed.
Yes.
Could you tell us what all that entails?
Yeah, so he had, and I don't know all the technical terms, even though I try to tell people I'm a doctor, I'm really not. He had a type of a break in there, somewhere on the outer part of his foot, and so he went down to Birmingham and got it fixed. He left our interview process Sunday night and got it fixed on Monday, and he's in a boot, I think, and walking around. But as I said last week, he should be. You never know; you can always have set, but he should be ready to roll this spring. But I tell you, as Joe said on there, you just talk about toughness and what 17 brings. We know he's a great player, but if you're a teammate of his, knowing what he was out there doing and playing on, how could you ever not go out there yourself and lay it on the line? He's a warrior, and I am appreciative of what he played through this past season to try and help us, win that title.
Was that since Cleveland?
Yes.
Brandon, you
got it fixed. Was that you have a surgery?
Yes, he did on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
and correct me if I'm wrong. Did you go through a head coach process in Carolina? Maybe John Fox through Ron, right? Like, how many of these have you done, basically?
So I've never been involved in the actual interview process, but sometimes would be on the outskirts of calling, getting references. What's this coach like? And just giving feedback to a Marty Herney. It didn't happen with Dave because Rivera was already there with Gettleman, but that was really my role. It was never anything like this. But what I did do was call some GMs that I have relationships with and ask them about their process and get some ideas, talked about some of the things they wanted to make sure they got, and I created my own template of what we want to get accomplished in each interview. Tried to make it as conversational. I went on an interview one time, and I was telling a couple of people, it felt like an interrogation. It was like a ping pong interview. 2 people, I was back and forth, and it was just like they were going straight down the checklist. I walked out of there, and I was like, there's no way they can hire me off this interview. They don't know enough about me. I was just kind of answering questions. I wanted to make sure this was like we were sitting at a round table, in a restaurant, a room alone, and we're in no rush. And as we checked off answers, it could go. I started each interview with their journey, and then we got into leadership. From there, it could start branching off into how you want the offense to look, staffing. But everyone took them in different ways. When we got to the end, when I knew it was about time to wrap up, if there was something that we did not touch on through the conversation, I made sure to say, hey, we're almost done, but we never talked about how you would, how an in-season practice would work for you or what's your weekly schedule. And so I made sure before they walked out of there that we had everything answered that we need to know to consider them, for this job.
When it comes to position coaches, how much had you been involved previously in the hiring process?
Yeah, so it could depend on which one. Sometimes it's like, maybe Sean or maybe the coordinator have worked with this coach and are like, hey, such and such is free. If he's available, let's go get him. So it would be like that. There's other times where, yes, I'm bring him in and I'm going to talk to him. We're trying to get to know him. Where, Sean or the coordinator might want to know my thoughts on him. But it kind of varies at times based on, whoever it is and our, other people's experiences with him in the building.
How much you plan to do it this time?
Yeah, same thing. Like it's kind of a mad dash. I've been giving Joe feedback of guys I'm asking about or hearing that are available or could get out of their deal, and he's doing the same. We're sharing information. Sometimes he's across the hall and I'm just texting him because I know he's on the phone, or he's already been Zooming people. But it's really about just making sure we get the right people. As Joe said, that's how you keep your culture and things like that. And as he said, the culture is about our players, and it starts there. But we want to make sure the people that are teaching and working with them are the right people. And so it's as much about their skill set as it is their DNA and their fit as people.
But a collaborative hire, this is not Joe making the call.
No, it's a very collaborative hire. It is his final call. The coach is like, if he, but if we're going to talk about it. If I've got an objection or something, he's going to listen. But it is Joe's final call. I just think that's the right way to structure it. He's responsible, for us winning games on the field.
Dalton did a scrum a little bit earlier. He said he did not need off-season surgery. Can you just confirm that, and just where is he at health-wise?
Yeah, so Dalton got multiple second, third opinions on that. We were unsure as we were managing that as the season went on whether he would need a surgery or not, but multiple docs that our people, that our physicians believe in, gave him the word that didn't think surgery was the best answer for him. It was more rehab, recovery, and a plan. It doesn't mean not doing it makes him just going to be 100%, at some point, but it's something that we think we can do things to help him, put strength in other areas to help the knee, and then we'll always have a plan when we get into training camp to make sure that it doesn't, the best we can, as long as nothing new happens, that we don't overwork it or something that would cause it to flare up the way it did this season.
And a lot of people have talked about Joe and just how smart he is philosophically. Can you just share what impressed you just about his acumen and just his overall knowledge of the game?
Joe is, Joe's interview was just really impressive. He went first, and I was like, all right, if the next number of candidates aren't any good, we got a guy that can be the head coach. So you're like, all right, we got at least one guy that we know can do it. And we obviously found some more that we thought were very qualified to be it. But Joe he knows way more than just offense. And that was what was great about this process. I've never talked to him about philosophies and how to win games and how to do things, and his insight into sports science or how we do practice, how things he would change. He also doesn't act like he's got all the answers. Joe has that mindset of wanting to lean on some of the the Sean Paytons of the world and people that he's coached with, but he also wants to surround himself with people with different experiences to help grow him and grow our team.
Brandon, can you tell me what Laura Pagula's role was in the hiring process? You talked about how Josh Allen was involved in schemes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What was her role?
Yeah, I would say everyone kind of like I was running the deal and the dialogue, but I told anyone along the way if you need some clarity or you need, and everyone's got different lenses that they come from and view. So, there were some interviews that we did that I don't know if Laura asked a question, and there were some that she might ask 2 or 3 questions. So some of it could be about, now, how did you say you got to, the LA Rams, you did this, like just trying to understand them. And as the process went along, I think she got more comfortable with the things that we were trying to make sure that we got exercise. But it was great to have different perspectives from both of our assistant GMs, Pete Gwelly from a business side. Laura's an accomplished person in other businesses. So various things can come up when you're looking for a CEO.
I know you've been here a while. Can we ask a couple roster questions?
Yeah.
You talk about salary cap in that situation. Interior offensive line seems to be the priority.
Yeah.
Bringing David back, you got to potentially extend Osiris. How much of a challenge is that to keep that group that's been so good together?
Yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate to run the same group back a couple of years, and you're looking at it and you're like, gosh, like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to trot out the same five next year that we did. But we do have some guys that we do believe in, and some of the guys you're talking about have earned the right to go to free agency. But we'll keep the dialogue going, and I'd love to trot out the same five next year. You never say never, and we'll just take it one day at a time. But if not, we'll make sure that we fill those holes the way we did before, because winning up front does not change. The game, Joe talked about the game evolves, and the personnel groups, more teams, we're going to 13 and 12 this year than the 10 and 11. But so many games are won and lost in the trenches and up front. And I would be an idiot to try and let our O-line, fall apart, and because we got to protect number 17. Without that, this offense will never be the same.
You talk about the trenches, other side of the ball. You poured a ton of assets into the D-line this year. Obviously, injuries were a big part of that, but at the end, against Denver, the production just wasn't there. Can you assess kind of how that effort went, looking back on it, on having such a focus on that particular part of the defense?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we added some pieces, some unique pieces. Joey Bosa's an accomplished player. We knew the main thing with Joey was putting a plan to keep him healthy, and for the most part we did. Did he have some wear and tear and a hamstring? Yes. Obviously, Ed Oliver played about 100 snaps. There's no tree I can go out back and pluck an Ed Oliver in October or November. A Michael Hoyt, you saw the versatility that he brought, and the acumen and the intelligence that he brought to our group. Landon Jackson was just getting going, it was like the light came on, and he was, at first I would say Landon was trying to do everything right instead of just playing football. He finally relaxed and just went out there, and freak car crash injury for him. So we lost a lot of pieces, and some of them maybe we could have controlled, maybe some you couldn't. But I also like the young guys we added. Obviously, Deion Walker, I thought he played a heck of a year. TJ was doing some things, had the knee deal. I kind of related him to when some other people, even back to Josh's rookie year, Josh was kind of struggling. He was out for like 5 games, came back and was a different player. I thought TJ, when he came back, if you go back and study, I thought his play took a tick up. I thought it was a good mental reset while he was rehabbing, the knee procedure he had. So I'm excited about the pieces that we have going forward. Greg Rousseau, I thought started a little slow, but as the year went on, he really got going and was making plays down the stretch for us. And we're going to need him and Ed and these young guys to help us take the next step. And again, I am always going to look for pieces up front on both sides of the ball. So if there's an opportunity to add somebody in the draft or free agency or trade or whatever it can be, I wouldn't shy away.
When do you want to make a decision on the 5th-year option for Dalton?
For Dalton, we technically don't have to soon, but I think you saw, if you go back, I did a little study of when Dalton was on the field. We averaged 7 more points going into the playoffs with Dalton on the field than without him. And so that shows you, and I think we were 2 and 3 in the games, without him. And if you just look at the things and the mismatch that he can be, so we need to keep him healthy, which we talked about earlier, and we need to make sure we armor him the best we can. But I don't see any reason why we wouldn't pick that up, but we'd probably do it later in the spring.